to this series of webinars on Communicaids. And thank you also for the overwhelming response that we have had. It's a pleasure to note your interest, and I hope we live up to your expectations. I would just like to give you a brief background about the program as well as Communicaids, why and how Communicaids emerged. As some of you are probably aware, the CommDeal program started on 1st November 2000, nearly 20 years ago. It was a program that was a kind of an impromptu program put together largely to address the needs of the many families and children who were being diagnosed with ASD and the near lack of facilities across even cities like Bangalore. So we were very clear that these children, if provided adequate help, could do well, could be included in mainstream society. But the efforts were not cohesive enough to bring about an impactful difference because it was spread across the city too little, too infrequently. So we wanted to put this together at one place by a multidisciplinary team. Autism spectrum disorders, as you know, there are
Ma'am, 1 minute here. I think the mute is on. I think by mistake the mute. Yes. Okay. Now the last sentence, ma'am.
Okay, so we put together this program and two clear objectives. One, with multidisciplinary teams working cohesively, we would address the autism-specific issues. And we also decided that we would look at the development, the overall development of the child, which is often ignored among programs that cater to these children. So it's a two-pronged program addressing autism-specific issues and the development of the child across many domains. So the program was started in November 2000, but then it grew very rapidly, and not just in Bangalore, but in other cities too. And then we felt that in order to meet the demand, that we had to document this and make materials available for the therapists so that they could work smoothly on the ground. This is when we went to develop the manuals, which would be easy for therapists, which would make their work easier because it is a stepwise manual. All of these lesson plans in the manuals have been field tested. They use indigenous material from India and that are easily available to middle-class homes, families. So these were some of the ground realities that we were addressing. As we worked with the children, we continue to learn from them of their difficulties, and that is when Communicaids came into existence. One of the first Communicaids that we developed was the Oromotor kit, and I'm grateful to my colleague, Ms. Ujwala Alluri, who's now in the UK and was unable to join us today, who came up with this idea. She noted the very many oromotor issues that we had seen in the children. The literature on autism barely spoke about these things at that time. Of course, since then, it is being documented extensively. We only knew them as picky eaters. But then when we worked with them, we saw that they have had a lot of oromotor issues. So the Oromotor kit in 2014 was the first kit that we developed beyond the manuals. But from then on, it has been a journey where anytime we've experienced something on the ground where we saw that there was some specific difficulty that the child or the family faced, we try to address it by developing a Communicate. So this is how all of our Communicaids have developed. Both the program, the manuals, and the Communicaids are completely indigenous. They have risen from the practical experience of the clinicians working with the children. They have been field tested here. The materials are available in India, and we wanted them at a reasonable price for Indian families. So this this is the background. And as we go through the next few weeks, my colleagues will take you through each of them. We have provided some time for question and answers at the end of every session. But, you know, given this excellent response that we have had of over 500 participants, it may not be possible for us to address everybody's questions after each session. So we are also putting together a Q&A session if needed. So if your questions are not answered at the end of a session and you have questions that you want clarified, please write to us, email us. After the 19th, we'll put together a session, bunch these questions to the different professionals and have an additional session if needed. So once again, thank you very much for your response. I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope that we live up to your expectations. I hope that you will take back simple lessons which will enable the children and the families that you work with, and that you will continue to partner us in this journey. So happy webinaring, and I will catch up with all of you at the last session. Thank you again.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll move ahead to the first presentation for the day. Taking us through the CommDeal group program, the rationale and the structure, we have Ms. Nirupama Shrikant. Ms. Nirupama Shrikant has been working very closely with Dr. Karanth over the last 17 years. She has worked as clinical coordinator for the clinical programs running at the CommDeal head office until 2014. I consider myself very fortunate to have worked with her in my first clinical experiences as a professional, a very passionate clinician, a very patient guide and mentor. She's currently working as consultant for the CommDeal Early Intervention Program at the CareAd Unit, St. John's Research Institute, Bangalore. It is indeed my pleasure to call upon Ms. Nirupama Shrikant to take over the first presentation for today.
Thank you, Ria, and thank you, Dr. Karanth, for actually putting this together. I consider it my privilege to be presenting the first presentation in this webinar series. So without wasting any more time, I'll get on to my presentation. So, so this is the program manual, which talks about the Communication Deal program. And it was released in the year 2010. And this is what I have here. It's a beautifully written program written by, it's a beautifully written manual written by our founder director, Dr. Pradeepa Karanth. And I hope that at the end of this presentation, I influence all of you to pick up this manual and also, you know, understand our program a lot better. So the Communication Deal program is an early intervention program that provides profile-based intervention within a developmental framework by an interdisciplinary team for children with autism spectrum disorders and other communication disorders. And our objective is to mainstream as many as possible by school entry age. This program was first initiated in the year 2000, November 1st, I remember right. The program was started more as a response to the need felt on the ground. Several parents made requests to Dr. Karanth, seeking her help in providing intervention to their children. Dr. Karanth's student, Ujwala, had done a survey of intervention services in Bangalore. And the findings of that survey suggested that there was a near total lack of intensive services for children with developmental disabilities and ASD. And so the need of the hour at that point was to support these children through an interdisciplinary approach, provide them interdisciplinary intervention through a team approach. Also, the outcome of Dr. Karanth's rich clinical experience of understanding the needs of children with developmental disabilities and ASD, her experience with physics, and her own decade-long work with Tito. A combination of all of this led to the beginning of a completely indigenous program, the Communication Deal program. And the program was initiated in Bangalore and was geared to the Indian socio-economic context. So rehabilitation services for developmental disabilities, ASD, in India is still geographically restricted and it's not very easily accessible. So when do we say that it's restricted? That's when families have to relocate from where they are staying to avail services. We also at this point must remember that intervention services for children with ASD is often long-term in nature, and it has to be provided over a sustained basis for a prolonged period of time. So this emphasizes, very much that we need to provide intervention within their own locality. And this is a very important aspect of our program. So, and we also know that what is very well established is that intensive early intervention is the most promising approach for alleviation of these disorders. It alters the course of eventual long-term outcome for a child with ASD. And if you provide them intervention when their developmental skills, as early as possible, when the developmental skills are not so pervasively disrupted as in the later years, it definitely affects their growth curves in a very positive manner. So this is what is a very quick, brief introduction to what our program is about. So the main features of our program is as follows. It's multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary. That means the team comprises of a speech language pathologist, an occupational therapist, or a physiotherapist, and developmental educator. So the team works together, and all three team members are responsible for all aspects of development of the child. When we say early, that's a very key feature of our program. We say we would love the children to enroll into our program as early as 2.6 years of age. And when this happens, you're giving that child the maximum possibility of attaining age-appropriate skills by school entry age, which is around 5.6 years, 6 years. When we say that our program is intensive, we mean that we need to see the children 3 hours every day. We need to see them 5 days a week over an entire academic year. The last point that I have in this slide is the time frame. The time frame is a very crucial aspect of our program. So the question of time frame within which developmental targets have to be achieved is the guiding principle of our program. So as I already mentioned to you, that intervention for children with ASD is long-term in nature. Along with that, we have to remember that there are gradual changes that takes place. So the nature of changes is very gradual. So this often results in therapists paying inadequate attention to the time frame of results. But this is what we've tried to look at very closely in the CommDeal program. So at the end of the first or the second year of the child being enrolled in our program, if the child has achieved age-appropriate skills and then we look at enrolling them into a supportive school environment. And if need be, we provide the child additional intervention in the areas where the delay is still present after the school hours. The other aspect, while I'm talking about the main features that I would like to mention, is that it is a program that has been designed to be cost effective in the Indian socio-economic context. So when I said it's indigenously based, it's just not about the theoretical background or that it has been, we haven't borrowed it, concretely from the West. So we may have looked at other programs there. But in terms of the particular permutations and combinations of professionals who work in the program, the ratio of therapists to child, the age range of children, the time that the children spend with us in this EI program, all of this has been very well thought out and worked upon, keeping in mind the Indian context. So every intervention program should be based on a theoretical framework. So the logo that you can see that you probably have seen on all my slides on the right-hand side, the logo of Communication Deal has evolved from and symbolizes the theoretical framework. So despite extensive research on the cause of ASD, the exact cause of ASD is unknown. However, there's a general consensus that it is biological and most likely neurological. So it is this biological cause that underlies the many sensory perceptual disorders, be it auditory, visual, tactile, kinesthetic, that is seen in many children with ASD. So this is the representation of the sensory perceptual disorders. So theoretically, if one or more senses are dysfunctional in an atypical manner, a child may develop a distorted perception of the environment. So it is our position that at the core of the difficulties of these children are differences in which differences in the way they process or perceive the environmental input across different modalities. So these differences, and we like to call them differences and not deficits, these differences will differ from one modality to another from child to child, and it may differ in the same child within different time frames. And why do we call them, we prefer to call them differences rather than deficits? That's because we know that a lot of children have these savant skills. A lot of children with ASD have savant skills. So they have, perhaps an example is that they have unusual talent in musical perception or appreciation of music. And this can be seen as a consequence of slightly prolonged auditory perception, slightly prolonged just by a few milliseconds. And this is what causes, these differences. So we don't call them deficits. So these differences contribute to their savant skills. So while a lot of documentation and research and work has been done about the sensory perceptual challenges that these children have, not much had been spoken earlier about the motor executive difficulties. But the motor component is only now being recognized and documented. So we do know that children with ASD have a whole range of difficulties, be it in motor imitation or planning, or they have difficulties in motor executive dysfunction, in learning motor movements, motor coordination challenges. So this is how we view the motor executive difficulties being another aspect of the challenges that children with ASD have. And apraxia, as we all know, is very well documented in children with ASD. So so if they do have motor executive difficulties, it could have its impact on the child on either just the whole body, or it could be with their fine motor skills, or it could go on to their more fine oromotor issues that the child may present. Now, when there are oromotor challenges, that is what is required for speech. So then it translates into difficulties in communication. So in our model, the communication, social and emotional challenges or deficits that children with ASD have is seen more as a consequence of the differences that they have in their sensory motor processing, and rather than being seen as the core deficits. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, that if a child has subtle auditory processing difficulties, this will impact his real-time processing of speech, and it will also affect his language acquisition process. So we see the communication or the social emotional challenges that the child has as a consequence of these four deficits that the children have. And finally, when we come to the behavioral problems, we interpret the behavioral problems more as the child's reaction to the basic difficulties that he is facing. So if he's unable to meet the expectations of the environment around him, and so then he's deprived of a very encouraging, nourishing environment. So that's when a child will develop certain defense mechanisms. So I could explain this with an example of a child who clings to his routines, or is very rigid in clinging to his routines, or certain things in his surroundings. So this is probably the child's defense coping strategy to deal with the fluctuating world around him. And why is the world around him fluctuating? That's because of the sensory motor differences that he has. So in summary, if I may just summarize the past 4 slides, the Communication DEALL program is based on a loosely structured framework of our understanding of ASD. So we believe that the theoretical underpinnings of the CommDeal program is that it is caused by a biological neurological disorder, which results in a range of sensory perceptual disorders and motor executive difficulties. The communication, social, and emotional difficulties are seen as consequence of these 2 challenges. And the behavioral issues that we do see are more of coping strategies that a child develops. So if you provide intervention to the child's sensory motor issues and his communication difficulties, then the behavioral issues will reduce. And we usually advocate a functional approach to the behavioral problems, and these are addressed incidentally. So in a nutshell, our framework is developmental, which means each therapist in the group works and builds on the specific developmental tasks, which are age appropriate to the age of the child. Our approach is eclectic. So when we say eclectic, it means that the occupational therapist or the speech language pathologist or the educator in our group will use his or her well-established methods, which they use in their regular therapy, but they will be practiced with some amount of modification, which will be made to suit the child, to the specific needs of the child in their group, in the program at that point. And the strategies that we use in therapy are those of learning. So different methods, but we will use and we will choose what suits the child the best. So the sessions vary from small group. So we take in 12 children at one time, and they are with us for an entire year. And the subgroups, so we work with, each therapist works with a group of 3 or 4 children. And then we also work in small, large groups and of 6 children, and there are sessions where we have all 12 children and 3 therapists together. The subgroups also vary from time to time based on how the children progress. So if we, at this point, just, people who are working in early intervention, you would recall that there is actually, in research that, in literature, you do see the curriculum for an EI program. And there's certain essential characteristics, that define what should be in an EI program. And some of them are, it should be a supportive environment. You should have tasks which are oriented towards imitation, language, play, social interaction. The EI program should have predictability. It should have a routine. It should look into planned transition in school. And I'm very proud to say that the Communication DEALL program incorporates most of these essential characteristics. Yeah. So it is very important that when you have we have a good intervention program, but we must evaluate the nature and degree of delay. And so at CommDeal, we do we have a very extensive evaluation procedure. It starts with a basic medical and developmental history, and then we follow it up with assessments of prerequisite behaviors, the child's motor skills, his sensory processing skills, and then we do a screening assessment of his of 8 developmental domains. We look at the motor skills across fine activities of daily living. Then we do an assessment of the child's communication skills, cognitive, social, and emotional skills. So here I'd like to illustrate how we do the profile-based intervention. And I'd like to, with this graph, I'd like to draw your attention to this slide. So what you see on the screen is a very colorful slide. So you can see red and yellow and blue and green. And if you look at the dates there, you see that so we do the assessment. So the child is with us for an entire academic year. And so we do assessments 3 times in a year. So the assessment, so this child was enrolled to us as early as 2.4 years when the child he was just 28 months. And if you look at the left part of the slide, where there's PLS, oromotor, and sensory profile. And this below that, you have the child's developmental domains. And what we have done is that we use a color coding to draw the therapist and the parents' attention to the areas that we need to first work upon, which is indicated by red. And the yellow indicates that the child does have some amount of skill, but it needs to be worked upon further. And the blue and the green says that the child has achieved the age appropriate skills. So the reason that we've put forward this slide is to draw your attention to the importance of the basic foundation skills on which other developmental skills are built. So when a child comes to us, the only thing they're concerned is about perhaps what is more visible to them. It's about the motor skills, or the child is not communicating enough. I want him to start speaking as early. What they often forget is that all of the developmental skills is built on a foundation of certain basic skills, which is the prerequisite learning skills or the child's oromotor skills or the child's sensory motor skills that are present. So at CommDeal, for the first 6 to 8 weeks, we believe in focusing, our intervention is largely on stabilizing these basic foundation skills. And once you work on, the child's attention, you work on his sitting, on his compliance, you help him with his feeding and toileting, you look at the sensory issues that are present and work on that, then the gains that you see is very cohesive, and the overall changes that you see in a child's profile is not patchy at all. So what happens is that, so I don't know if you can see my cursor. So when you start working on this initially, automatically you will see that the child starts making gains in his motor skills, his receptive language starts moving up, his cognitive skills start moving up. So what I want to actually speak about in this slide is that there is an overall sequence of intervention that we follow at CommDeal. And unless you work on the foundation skills of the child, you will not see gains in his developmental domains, which is where the child catches up with age-appropriate skills. So unless these are in place, the shift will not happen. So once the therapists work on the foundation skills, then each therapist starts to work in their area of motor skills or communication or the cognitive social skills. So once these are settled by the midterm assessment, that is in the middle part of this slide, you realize that the child has made substantial gain in his motor skills. There are some issues still present in his activities of daily living, but his receptive language has shot up, his cognitive skills have moved up. And if you look at this part of my presentation, you find that except for speech, most of it, he has skills, but we need to look at stabilizing them further. So in our experience, the profile-based changes are first seen in the motor skills, and then there are improvements in receptive language and the cognitive skills. And the last to improve is the expressive language, social and emotional skills. So when you share the profile of the child in this manner with the parents, it's easier for them to understand. There's transparency. And here we're paying, like I spoke to you all about the time frame, we're paying attention to what I need to achieve at the end of the year. So when the child came to us, he was 2.4 years. And when at the end of 10 months of being in a program, and he was 38 months, he had almost caught up age appropriate skills. And a child with a profile like this is ready to be enrolled in a supportive mainstream school. And if he will require some additional help, it could be in the form of individual therapy, twice or thrice a week. So this is the link to the manual. Do pick up your copy. There's the manual, the CommDeal program manual is both in English and in Hindi. And I have shared the link on this slide. So I do hope you do pick up your copy. So Ria, should I go on to the next one, or we take questions right now?
Yeah, we'll take questions, ma'am. So any of you who have questions, can quickly put them across, unmute yourselves and put them across to Nirupama ma'am, or you could put them in the chat box and we'll take them up. So we'll take a couple of questions before we move on to the next presentation.
Ma'am, there was one question which was received during the registration, and the question is, how do you find out that which child, whether the child will fit in the group, whether it's a multiple disability, or you only take ASD children in the group?
Yeah, so right now the communication deal program that I spoke to you about is for children who have been diagnosed with ASD. So it usually is they come with a reference from child psychiatrist or a developmental pediatrician. And like I mentioned, we have our own set of assessment procedures, and we have a screening format. So not every child with ASD will be suited for the communication deal program. So once the team does the screening assessment, there's certain criteria which, if fulfilled by the child, will then he be enrolled into the group intervention therapy. At times, we also look at enrolling them initially. The child initially may not even be ready for group intervention. So then we will enroll them for individual therapy for a short period of time, and then we take the child into the group.
Ma'am, the second question is, after the group intervention program, like you spoke about 10 months,
Yeah.
then is this all the children go to mainstream school? Are they ready for that?
Yeah. So that's where our program is different. So every child's profile. So we know that you must have often read that every child is different. Right? You've seen one child with autism. You've seen one child with autism. So every child's profile will not move the same way. So while they are in a group, each of them have their own profile. So there's some children who move faster and they catch up age appropriate skills within a year. And there's some who don't catch up age appropriate skills. But if we find a support, but we have to look, we have certain criteria again for discharge from our program or enrollment into a school. So if the child fulfills that, it's only then that they recommended admission into a mainstream school. Otherwise, they will continue with the program with some sort of support in the morning in a school.
Ma'am, another question. Is there any fixed age range for group intervention program?
Yeah, so we are looking for this, the program that I spoke to you about, it's 2.5 years to 5.5 years. To 6 years, we're open to taking in the children. But, and I also, if you recall in one of the slides, I said that if you start early, intervention very early, where the skills are not so disrupted, it gets easier. So this is the age range for the program that I've spoken to you about, so the regular CommDeal program.
Ma'am, one more question. How many sessions do the children attend per week or month?
So they, okay, so it's all 5 days in the week and the entire month over 10 months, over an entire academic year. So they ask for 3 hours every day, all 5 days a week. And we just probably give them a week's break in December. Otherwise, they're there with us all through the month and over the academic year.
Any other questions?
Ma'am, there is one more question in the chat, which is asked by Ms. Razeen. Can you give us an example how you will be planning with the strategies for a child diagnosed with ASD? The child's age is 5 years with severe sensory and behavioral issue, only a few single syllable verbal utterance with no communication intent.
Okay.
It's a loaded question, ma'am.
Yeah, it's a heavy question. Okay, so the first thing I think that struck me there was the child's age. So he's 5 years already. So I'd have to look at the assessment and the gaps that are present, and I would use a very a practical, a very pragmatic approach as to see what could be the needs of the child at that point. I'd work very closely with the parent because the child's already 5 years. But I would still like to, spend a lot of time with his prerequisite learning skills and the sensory motor issues. I believe that if you work on those two initially, and I would not even look at his communication issues or the other issues that the child has, I'd still work on these two. But I'd work very closely with the family and put him onto intensive, perhaps individual therapy at first, and then slowly initiate him into a group. But at 5 years, it is a challenge, certainly. But, you haven't lost hope, but we still can help them. But I'd prefer to work on his prerequisite learning skills and his sensory motor issues. And look at his communication in a way that, help him out with that too.
That's all, ma'am. Thank Thank you so much, ma'am.
All right, so I'll start with the second one. Yeah.
Yes. So moving on to our second presentation, giving us insight into the pre-deal program or the toddler group program, we have Ms. Sabika Zaidi. Sabika is an occupational therapist by profession with a rich experience in working with children and their families with developmental disabilities. She has worked at the CommDeal Trust for about 4 years. Having been in a team together with her conducting the pre-deal program for over 2 to 3 years, I must say that she's a very enthusiastic and a fun partner. She's currently a graduate student at the University of Southern California, LA, US. A very warm welcome to you, Sabika. Over to you.
Hi. Thank you, Ria, for that thoughtful introduction. Good evening, everyone, and very good morning from here at Los Angeles. It's about 3 a.m. here, and I promise to be as coherent as I could be. Also, I want to thank Dr. Karant and the CommDeal Trust for giving me this opportunity to be part of this webinar series. And it feels so good to be among my former colleagues. During my presentation, feel free to put your questions into the chat box. Our team will be monitoring those and we'll get back to you. Right, so, sorry. Right, so I'm here to talk about the pre-deal program and the manual that it comes with. Well, this is my favorite program of all the CommDeal programs, so I'm a little bit biased for this. So let's start on with this. The pre-diagnostic intervention program, known as the pre-deal program, is a program from CommDeal developed specifically to cater to the needs of very young children. The pre-deal manual is the outcome of the field trials of pre-diagnostic mother-child intervention program that was designed to address the developmental needs of very young children, and also to parallelly provide parents with trainings to implement strategies within the home environment and support them in building healthy relationships and support them in their parenting journeys. Like I said, that it caters to the needs of very young children. And when I say very young children, I'm saying toddlers in the age range of 18 to 36 months. And boy, that is early. And these are the kids who are identified as being at the risk of autism, even though they have not received a formal diagnosis of autism spectrum disorders. The purpose of this program is to provide early, intensive intervention so as to optimize the child's potential to join the mainstream. The highlight of this program is really the parent involvement, along with the interdisciplinary team. The program directly translates from the ample research evidence that supports the parental involvement as one of the invariable factor and an integral of early intervention programs for children with autism. And I also wanted to, when they asked me to do this presentation, I was reflecting back to that, what I have gained from this program as an instructor, as an occupational therapist, and what I have given to the families. And through this parent professional collaboration, you help children generalize these skills, because when parents are involved in the interventions, they are able to carry over what child has learned throughout the day, and hence increasing the probability of learning a behavioral skill quickly. As the background in research now, that I'm really, really happy that this program, we've been practicing the research-based evidence, that is the collaboration between the parent and professional working with the child in the program is very critical to effectiveness of any program, really. And I'm so proud that we've been really client-centered throughout this program, and throughout even the other programs as well. very often during the group program, children pick up skills from their peers, and that sort of acknowledges the natural peer-to-peer learning environment. And that's, I mean, that's, you know, that's just the natural part of it. I mean, you don't really plan for it, but when this happens, you know, it's a really proud moment. And lastly, it has also helped us to keep a tab on our housekeeping. I mean, we been with the involvement of mothers in the program has enabled us to reduce our, you know, costs really, you know, and also to enhance the reach of the benefits to a larger population. Right, and just a little sneak peek into the history of this program. The pre-deal program was initiated by CommDeal Trust in January 2010. And as I previously mentioned, that it was a response to many young children who had been identified with autism spectrum disorders and had lack of services. And in India, there was lack of services and any sustaining models that could bridge this gap. And this motivated the founder director, Dr. Pratibha Karand, and her dedicated team to try out gripping children based on their age, diagnosis, and developmental needs, and run a shorter duration program for 5 days a week. The subsequent gains made by these groups motivated us to sort of continue this program as a regular program. And I mean, it still has enabled us to continue in provision of accessible, affordable, high quality, intensive early intervention with a clear target of maximizing chances for every child of inclusion and retention in mainstream schools. Right, now let's now talk about the structure of the program, which I love. It's a 2-hour program, and it can cater up to the developmental needs of 12 children. I mean, that's the group size that we can manage. And they're, of course, along with their families and, you know, our team. The multidisciplinary team has the occupational therapist and developmental educator and or developmental educator / developmental psychologist. Before beginning of the program, the team brainstorms and pre-plan the activities, demonstrations, and very crucially, we start documenting the current status of the child using standardized assessments, and according to that, we develop a long or short intervention plan for these individual children. The program begins with a large group activity and then further splits into 3 different subgroups that timely rotates between occupational therapy session, speech therapy session, and education session, where the therapist very carefully works with the individual needs of the child, but also keeps the integrity of the group needs. Each child is reassessed, as Mrs. Nirupama Shrikant said, that in this program as well, every child is reassessed in every 3 months to track their progress or to see the areas of improvement, next goals to be worked on, and yes, obviously brainstorming on skills that child needs more help in. And not just the child, even the parents meet a counselor periodically to address their needs and to sort of promote their health and well-being. Right, so in the next picture, right, so in the following pictures, you will see our therapists interacting with the children and the mothers. So in the next picture, okay, so this is a small group where our occupational therapist is interacting with the mothers and the children. And I assume that they are working on the they are working on the imitation skills. The OT also focuses on the sensory areas, motor areas, repetitive behavior, and other skills related to these developmental domains. Right. So the other group, while one group is with the OT, the other group goes to the speech language pathologist. And here, it's so good to see my former colleague. She's an experienced therapist who who is working on the communication skills of the children. And here she's working to develop pointing skills, which is the precursor for the future skills, future language skills. The speech therapist works on the language skills, receptive and expressive, and also sort of this domain. They also the focus also overlaps a little bit with the other therapists, where she works with the social skills, social communication skills of these children. And in the last picture here, our developmental psychologist is working working on PLS skills, prerequisite learning skills, which I'm sure you will learn more about in upcoming presentations from my colleagues. So, I mean, just to give you a gist, prerequisite learning skills are, you know, they ultimately form the basis for the future skills. And I'm really proud about this area of working. I mean, this is a very, I mean, even being here, I realize that this is the area that I have not heard anybody else talking about, except here at CommDeal. So, I mean, this is really a precious area that we work on. And not just the PLS, the psychologists, the developmental psychologists will move further to work with the cognitive, emotional, and cognitive, social, and emotional skills. Right. And just to give you a little visual treat, so this is a little visual data to sort of exhibit our you know, quantitative, methodical, and transparent documentation of skills throughout the developmental domains in the period of 10 months. I will not go into the detail of how we make this profile right now, because this is beyond the scope of this presentation, but I'm sure that you will learn in the future presentations. So this profile is of a 23-month-old boy, a really, really small boy, who was brought to the CommDeal Trust head office by his parents with the complaints of poor response to name call, poor imitation skills, and inadequate communication skills. After intensive assessment, we thought that the team thought that he would be a good fit for our pre-DEALL program. And just, you know, if you could, you can just make out visually that child has made considerable gains in all the developmental domains. And this particular child was recommended to a mainstream school after the period of 10 months. And that's a victory. I mean, that's huge for us. I mean, even for the parents and for the child, for us. And this next profile is this boy is slightly older than the previous child. He's 4 years, 7 months. And in his profile, you can see that, you know, in his profile too, I mean, I'm looking at it and I'm so impressed with the improvements he has made in his language areas, both receptive and expressive language in the period of 10 months. And yes, the work is not over with him or with other children like him. The work continues, but the format may change. So, I mean, for this child, he no longer comes for a group session, but to cater his individual needs and the skills that we couldn't develop, or, you know, he was not able to develop. We're trying to work on those skills through individual sessions. And just to end, this is, so this is the link to the pre-DEALL manual. And I have a copy of it here, and I find it really, really handy and very useful. And so please check out this pre-DEALL program manual and many other wonderful resources that is available on the website, www.communicaids.com. I would highly recommend you to get a copy of it. And thank you for listening to me. I'm sorry if I was very fast. And I look forward for your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, we're ready to take up a couple of questions before we move on to the next presentation.
So is pre-DEALL, so there is a question which says that is pre-DEALL program also valid for kids who are lesser than 2 years?
Yes. So, I mean, this program is for kids who are in the range of 18 months to 36 months. So yes, a 2-year-old would easily fit into that program. Yes, but age is not the only factor. I mean, after the assessments, we have to see that if this child would be able to move in the group program. So I mean, technically yes, he can be enrolled in that program, but yes, we will have to do further assessments to see if this program is really for him or not.
Okay, I think the answer to the question that I'm going to say is already covered, but but again, if you can repeat, in one of your slide, you mentioned DP. So what is
Oh, okay.
DP and
I'm
what
sorry for that.
DP does for the children?
All right, I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for using a jargon. So DP is developmental psychologist, and developmental psychologists, they work on the PLS skills. It's called prerequisite learning skills. And in prerequisite learning skills, you focus on attention, eye contact, setting tolerance, and compliance. Just hang tight. You will learn more about it in future slides. I mean, in upcoming presentations. I'm just giving you a general view. And once the PLS is stabilized, generally there is no time scale that how long it takes us to stabilize the PLS skills, but I would say it takes us minimum 3 months to stabilize the skills. And once those skills are stabilized, the developmental psychologists, they move to the cognitive, social, and emotional skills. So cognitive would be, general problem solving. Social skills would be, making friends, and emotional skills is like showing empathy or, showing appropriate emotion to a trigger or to a situation.
Okay. I hope it answers your query. Okay, there's one more question. Are there any limitations of this program?
Okay, that question is a little open-ended. Limitation of this program. What would the limitation of this program would be? Yes, age is a limitation, I would say. I mean, and the mother has to be, one of the parent has to be inside for the program. So if the parents are, so so if both parents are working, they do have to work on their work schedules to be with the child during the program. And that's a complete, I mean, that's a complete yes for this program.
Another one. So according to your experience, what are the issues you have faced while working in the group with the parents?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I would just say that when a child as young as 2 years or 3 years is coming to you, definitely parents come, the child is newly diagnosed, there's a lot of stress in the parents, but I mean, you cannot generalize it, but, so, I mean, that's why it's not a challenge, but it's something that we really appreciate, that healthy family helps the child to be healthy as well, right? So that's why we sort of take care of the parents too, through the family counseling, and whatever challenges we are facing, we sit together, brainstorm, and try to work with them to overcome whatever it is. From it can be acceptance issue, or if the child is struggling in the group, or parents want something else. I mean everything is workable as long as we both know that what the final outcome is. That is, to help child develop the gap skills in his profile.
Now I request everyone to email us the questions or queries that you may have, and we will address it. Maybe we'll have one more session, or we'll address it through email only. Thank you so much. Ria, over to you.
Yeah. So moving on to the third presentation, Ms. Lakshmi Priya will be talking to us about the Family Mediated Intervention Program and Manual. Ms. Lakshmi Priya is a senior developmental educator who has been with the CommDeal Trust since September 2007. She is currently coordinating the group programs running at the head office She is what we call our silent strength and support. Over to you, Lakshmi.
Thank you, Ria. Good afternoon, everyone. Here I am going to talk about another program from CommDeal, that is FMIP program. FMIP program is Family Mediated Intervention Program. This is the program manual we released last year in 2019. What is FMIP program? In this program, our main focus is on training the family. This program is designed to reach families of children with autism spectrum disorder and other developmental disorders who may find it difficult to attend regular sessions due to various reasons. Through this model, we encourage the family to take initiatives to work with their children and become the primary therapist for their own child. Why it was designed. Since we wanted to improve the reach of the CommDeal program to every needy family, and the focus was to extend the CommDeal program beyond the CommDeal head office and deliver the CommDeal services or FMIP services via CommDeal affiliate units and distant mode to any other institution that requires FMIP model of CommDeal program. Other than this, we understood that every child with autism spectrum disorder or any other special needs children, even when identified early, will not be in a position to enroll in the intensive early intervention program due to various reasons such as distance, time, or economic constraints. Number of families coming from a distance, they are unable to avail of regular program. Even difficult to find out accessible, affordable intervention services near to their home. Difficult to find out a multidisciplinary team in one roof. It's impossible for every family to shift to nearest to intervention centers, and even the fee structure of the FMIP is affordable to any family. Even we understood that the importance of initiating a home training program via parents means preparing the parents via a home training program, and they have to conduct the activities with their children at home. The focus was need to scale up our program and scale up to children with other developmental disorders. If I will talk about the aim of a family mediated intervention program, even as of now, we all understood that early intervention is the most promising approach for these disorders. Successful integration can only be achieved with adequate preparation in the early years with their parental support. Preparing the parents as primary therapists for their own child, encouraging parents to work with their child's overall developmental skills with inputs from therapists in the initial time. Prepare the parents to handle their concerns by themselves in later years. If I can tell about example, we are preparing the parent how to prepare social stories for maybe social stories for haircut or nail cut, or even the child has a problem of pushing friends. So once we are preparing the parent how to prepare social stories, here again see the every time the parent doesn't need to come to us. Later time they can only prepare based on the issue whatever they will be going to face it in the future time. And if I will talk about the FMIP program structure, this is again a 10-month program. Once the family is enrolled in the program, an orientation is given about FMIP structure. Again, the duration of the program is 10 months. The regular assessment will decide whether the child needs to continue the program or after the 10 months, whether the child can be discharged from the program. The family has to come every month twice to attend the program with their child. The program is conducted by a multidisciplinary team of occupational therapist, speech language pathologist, and developmental psychologist or developmental educator. The family receives inputs from 3 therapists. Each therapist interacts with the parents and the child for a duration of 45 minutes. There we will be giving the goals to the parents, plus whatever their concerns we will be addressing to them. Again here, family counseling is very important in this program. And other main features of this FMIP program is video feedback and parent DT sessions. Every third session, the family has to come with a video because we are not seeing because the family is working with the child and with our guidance. So we would like to see how the family is conducting activities with the child. If there is any, we will be analyzing the videos and we will be getting back to them with our feedback. And parent DT sessions means, again here we are requesting the family to conduct a demonstration therapy in front of the therapist. Again with the parent DT, the parent will be motivated and they are aware about, okay, whatever we are trying with the child, that is something correct, only correct strategy we are using. So the confidence building also we can try with this parent DT sessions. And there is a communication diary. Communication diary, parents can use the diary to write the goals shared by therapists, and even they can write their concerns in the diary, because the communication diary actually it is a communication between therapist and for the therapist and the parent. And next, if I am talking about the family counseling. Family counseling is an important component of the program, since much of the outcome of FMIP depends on the family's understanding of the issues faced by the child. Even we are helping the parents to boost their confidence, reduce anxiety, share responsibilities among themselves, or even prioritize their work, scheduling activity time. These all areas we are helping the family. And next, if I will be talking about what are the areas FMIP team will focus. FMIP team will focus to develop skills on children's PLS skills. We will be starting with the prerequisite learning skills. Prerequisite learning skills, again, we are looking in the beginning like eye contact, attention, joint and sustained attention, sitting tolerance, and even compliance to adult directed activities. Again, we will be focusing, the team will be focusing sensory issues, toileting and feeding skills, oromotor skills, and the developmental skills like gross motor, fine motor, activities of daily living. Communication skills, again, we are looking there receptive language and expressive language, cognition, social and emotional skills. Other than this, behavioral issues also we will be handling in the sessions. Next, if documentation. CommDeal believes in documentation and it is integral to our intervention programs. We will update the child's profile and other child-related assessment forms. Updated documentation helps the therapist and the family to understand and track the child's progress and the developmental skills the child has to achieve in the future. Field trials, as with all the CommDeal programs, FMIP was subjected to field trials at the CommDeal head office in Bangalore. And FMIP program is now established in other states of India through CommDeal affiliate units. It's one in Kiran Society in Uttar Pradesh, Varanasi, and Deepshika Ranji. Here I would like to mention these are the two centers. Not only FMIP program, they tried with not only with ASD children, other developmental disabilities also, and they had a good success in this program. And we had understood that families are motivated by this program and have provided feedback indicating significant improvements in their children who has been enrolled in the FMIP program. In this manual, we get an understanding of FMIP program structure, functioning, and outcomes. And to purchase, please log on to communicaids.com website. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshmi. We have a couple of questions here.
Okay.
In the FMIP, will the therapy move through individual sessions or group sessions?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's an individual session. This is not a group program.
Right.
Yeah.
And another question, what are the challenges you come across during this program?
Okay, because in the orientation time, okay, we will be mentioning to family about most of the work they have to do from their side. What are the challenges mainly we face is in the beginning, they will be very much ready to try activities, but slowly, maybe, especially maybe video feedback, getting from video feedback, sometimes it's a challenge for us. Maybe sometimes they may say only one person is at home, so we can't take the video. Plus again, sometime demonstration from their side, demo giving also, we faced challenges, but still I think when we are motivating them, we are encouraging them, they are willing to conduct the, they are cooperating with us. So there are challenges, but still I think we can overcome with our way of talking to them or counseling the family.
Right. Another question, what makes FMIP different and unique from the other programs available for intervention?
FMIP is again, it's not a regular program compared to other group intervention. This will be getting the family only for 2 days. Because our family can't come for the regular session, for them we are recommending this FMIP program. I don't know, this is the question, Ria?
Yeah, I guess. Okay. Is there any age range for the FMIP program?
No, there is no age range. Till 10 years we are taking children in the FMIP program.
There is one more question. So
Yeah.
what makes FMIP different and unique from other programs available for intervention?
Yeah, I think Lakshmi took that question, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Add a
Miss
little more to
Malti,
that.
Ma'am wants to.
Yes, ma'am.
yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
There are repeated questions about what makes FMIP unique. I think the uniqueness of the program lies in the fact that we are trying to reach any family which needs help, irrespective of where they are, whether they can afford it, whether they can travel to, therapists. All of these, I think, we have considered, and we are trying to reach as many kids as we can. And I must say that some families have understood this very well and are doing and have done an excellent job. Some of the positive feedback that we have got from our FMIP centers in Varanasi and in Ranchi, they have had, because they are both catering to rural populations, they've had great difficulties in providing the necessary services to these children. And they latched on to the strength of this program and have used it very, very effectively. So effectively that they then requested us to move on from just catering to children with autism to other children with other disabilities. There was another question earlier about multiple disabilities. Kiran Center has done an excellent job with children with cerebral palsy. Deepshika Ranchi is doing a great job with children with intellectual challenges. So I think that is the uniqueness of FMIP. And I'm happy to say that we are now scaling it up by making our program available on an Android phone. The intention of this was to reach populations which cannot access therapy services regularly. And I think that is the strength of FMIP.
Thank you, ma'am.
No more questions, Ria.
Yes. We will move on to the fourth presentation. Back to Ms. Nirupama Shrikant. She will be talking to us about the CommDeal manual for families of children with autism spectrum disorders. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Ria. So I'm talking about this very briefly. So this is the CommDeal family manual, the CommDeal manual for families with children with autism spectrum disorders. We released this in the year 2010. So the need for this manual. So I'm talking of this. I just want to share with you all that this manual was released much before, when we just had the CommDeal regular program that I first spoke to you all about. We did not have the pre-deal program. We did not have the FMIP at that point. So the need for the manual at that point was because the focus of the communication deal program then was largely has been on the child. It still continues to be on the child. And the rationale at that point was that if we succeed in helping the child, the issues of the family will automatically be addressed. But then we were aware that families of children with ASD are under tremendous pressure. So, when there are a combination of factors that add to this pressure, they have, it's when the gradual onset of symptoms, or it could be just with coping with the diagnosis, or it could be the emotional upheavals that they have at home, the marital problems that they may have. And these were some of the issues that most families faced. So then we realized we were sensitive and we were aware that the issues faced by the family impinged on the overall well-being of the child. So what we did is we gradually and progressively increased our involvement with families, and the publication of this manual was a major step in this direction. So I'd like to emphasize also that the understanding of ASD, for the audience today, that our understanding of ASD, not just ours but worldwide, the understanding of ASD and its complexities is undergoing rapid changes. And while this manual addresses very basic issues that families face, we as professionals who are committed to working with children with ASD, it's important that we keep up to date with the changing literature and the changing trends, and with the research happening all around the world. So how did we work on this manual? It's a wonderful way that Dr. Karant actually, worked on this, bringing out this manual in a very phased manner. So what we did was that we wanted to help lessen the anxieties of the families of children with ASD. And we had a counselor at that point who carried out a survey with all the families to find out what are the challenges that these families face. So what we did first was we had an interactive workshop, which was attended by 10 professionals and a large group of parents. And the 12 professionals that we chose were from, they were all working in the field of ASD. There was a child psychiatrist, there were 2 of them who were into counseling, and there was one doctor come parent. So we had an interactive workshop, and during this workshop, there were many questions that were put forward by parents, and there were issues that were also raised by the professionals. So we created a master list, which was a compilation of the frequently asked questions by the families. And then these questions we shared with the professionals who attended the workshop, and we also shared these questions with the CommDeal staff. And the compilation of these responses, of the responses to these questions by the different experts and professionals and staff of CommDeal, led to the content of this manual. So the manual itself is divided into 3 parts. So there's part 1, which is with issues concerning the family, part 2 with issues concerning the child, and part 3 with general issues. So I've just put 3 slides, which talks about the the sample questions that were there. I'm talking of 2010. So they would have questions like, how can we be a positive advocate for our child, or we need respite care for our child at times, where should we go for help? So we had a compilation of answers by the professionals and the CommDeal Trust. So parents had different views. They could see how professionals across answered a particular question. So some of the other questions were, I find no time for myself, I'm completely exhausted, how can I manage my time? Or what do I do to make my 3-year-old son interact with other children in the building? Or, at that point, it was everybody's talking about early diagnosis. How early should the diagnosis be? Or I do not know how to, interact with my newly diagnosed child. I need some help. While we're aware that this manual needs to be updated and we are working on that, but I still feel some of the questions there are still relevant even today. And a lot of young parents that I do see, the moment the diagnosis is given to them, they seem to forget how to interact with their child, or they're just lost with the number of interventions that are available to them at this point. So this manual has answers which helps them kind of think in a different manner. So we will be updating this, but we thought we would just share this with you because this is a manual also that we have as a part of our Communicaids. Yeah, so thank you, Ria. I've made of this a very brief presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. If there are any questions, we'd like to address them.
Just one more clarification, Ria. I think there was one question about the shortcomings of the FMIP. I would like to emphasize that one of the problems that we have had is that because the family and the child comes to us in alone and not with others, developing the social skills of the child is a little more difficult. In our group intervention, hard as it is, we very soon see children settling down, making
Ma'am, your audio is muted, ma'am. You're not, yes, ma'am.
So that becomes a problem. And sometimes we have tried to make an effort to get some of the FMIP children in a group so that we do cater to their social skills also. That is one of the shortcomings.
Yes, thank you.
Ria, we have no questions.
Yes, yeah, so I'd like to conclude if there are no questions.
May I just add a thing, ma'am, Dr. Karanth? May I just add a note that I think what's important about the CommDeal, I'd like to call it philosophy, because every program that has evolved, like from the first program, it was always a response to what the families needed and what the child needed. So that's how we've evolved. And even now, the program that I spoke about, or what Sabika spoke about, so we're constantly fine-tuning, and I think that's our strength, because we're so tuned in as a team. So we work so well together. So be it the regular CommDeal program, or if it's the pre-deal or the FMIP, the three professions involved, all three of them feel so responsible for the child. And there are suggestions that we take in so well. So every program has actually led to another program. And I think that's been, the strength of CommDeal, and that's been the biggest learning for me, that whatever the challenges that you face at work, there's always something that we as professionals can do to help the family. Am I right, Dr. Karanth? If you could add to that, I think that's a very
thank you for that. Yeah, and I must add a word about how proud I am of our teams. Okay, they are scattered across the world. You saw a fine example today. That I think has been another strength of CommDeal.
Thank you, ma'am. So if there are no more questions, we'd like to conclude. If any of you would like to purchase your own copies of our Communicaids and other resources, please make a note of the link and do access our website for the same. For any further queries regarding clinical training programs and our Communicaids, please write to us on the email IDs that you see on the screen. And we'll address them either via email, or as Dr. Karanth said at the beginning, we will have a session where we take up all the questions maybe at the end of the webinar series. Our next webinar is on the 6th of August, which is a Thursday at the same time, 3 p.m. Indian Standard Time. I thank you all for your participation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all at the next one. Thank you.